I'm Roger Assad, and I love real estate. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this episode, episode 15, we are asking the questions, sellers are dropping prices, is the crash here? Let's get into it. All right, guys, I don't know if you've heard, but there have been a lot of stuff in the news that came out in the last week. In fact, let me share my screen here. More sellers drop price as market cools. All right, so let's break that down a little bit before I get into the article a little. Before I get into the article, so sellers are dropping prices. So what does that mean? Does that mean that sellers are putting their homes on the market at a lower price? No. Does that mean sellers are fearful? Not necessarily. Essentially what that means is that when you put your house on the market, and by market I mean you advertise it on the MLS, which is known as the multiple listing service, which is basically a database and a network of, which is a database of homes that are advertised on an internal system that realtors have access to. It also feeds out information to sites like Zillow, Redfin, etc. That's what the MLS is. So if someone basically wants to sell their home, they put it on the MLS, usually through an agent. You can also pay a service that will put it on the MLS for you for a flat fee, but they won't do any paperwork for you. You advertise it to agents as well as anyone who has access to the internet. All right. So when you do that, sellers have a price in mind. Now, for the last 18 months or so, it's been an extremely strong seller's market. And what do I mean by that? I mean that sellers are getting so many offers when they put their house on the market that has allowed them to be extremely picky about what offers to accept. It's not just as simple as just accepting the most money, because what if you have two offers that are at the same price? Well, there are other things that will make an offer more attractive than the other offer, like let's say no contingencies, as in no inspection contingency, no appraisal contingency, no finance contingency. So sellers have been accustomed to putting their house on the market at a price that should be around what market is, and then getting offers with no contingencies that were way above their asking price. Now, what's happened is that now we're seeing that get pulled back, where not only are they not getting their not only not getting offers that are more than what they asked for without any contingencies, they're not even getting, or at least some of them are not getting their asking price, which is forcing some of them to basically lower their asking price, with keeping in mind that the asking price is what they put it on the market. All right, so let's take a quick look into this article. So in this article, it says number one in the state looks like it's Boise, Idaho. 2 out of 3 sellers dropped their asking price in June, and then it says Tampa here. 44% of their sellers dropped their price. All right, so let's just skim through this real quick to see. And this is what I don't like about these articles, because I mean, obviously they want to get as many people, eyeballs on these articles as possible. But when they make these claims like 61% of the people drop their asking price, in Idaho, but they don't tell you by how much, because if people are only dropping their asking price by 5%, is it that big of a deal? Probably not. But let's see if they got here, and they actually don't, which probably tells me that the asking price. Oh, that's another thing too. When they drop their asking price in the realtor world, that's known as a price reduction. So these sellers that have experienced these price reductions, this doesn't actually tell me by how much. It's just saying that hey, that they are actually reducing prices, which is definitely a good sign for a lot of the buyers that felt that were sitting on the sideline, that felt they were priced out of the market. But I just want to caution everyone just to understand that sellers reducing their asking price, maybe we're heading toward a crash, but probably not. The balance of probability, probably not. But either way, there's a lot of things that have to happen before we get to a crash anyway. So for those of you guys that were wondering if the crash is here, you could basically cut off the video right now, because I'm going to tell you right now that no, the crash is not here. Obviously, the housing market has cooled. Prices are not going up as fast as they were even prior to like a month ago. Now, let's take a look at some of these other articles, see if we could kind of get an idea of where we are in as far as the market cycle is concerned. Is a crash around the corner? Or what more likely is going to happen is that as houses aren't selling for the pie in the high skies, we're probably going to go into more of a balanced market, which means that a lot more transactions will happen. Hopefully more inventory comes onto the market, and it'll be a bit easier for people to purchase that home they're looking for. And of course, that's assuming they get this whole thing with inventory figured out as far as supply chains and cost of materials, which I read an article earlier this week that said the price of construction materials has actually gone down a little bit, which hopefully that can alleviate issues and cause more builders to build more and maybe, be able to build more affordable houses. So let's take a look at the next article. So in June, 21%, that's a little better than 1 in 5 home purchase agreements fell through. So what does that mean? Well, if you're a realtor like myself, it means a lot of opportunities, and I'll tell you why. What this essentially is talking about, when they say a home purchase agreement, they're talking about a purchase or sale agreement, also known as a sales contract. When a buyer wants to purchase the home from the seller, they make a written offer in the form of a contract. That contract is filled in with all of the terms, with the most important being how much are they willing to pay for the property. Is the property going to be financed or cash? How much of an earnest deposit, also known as an escrow deposit, is going to be put down to show how serious they are? And then a bunch of other legal things that they put in there, as well as contingencies. Generally, the three main contingencies are the inspection contingency, which typically could be anywhere from 10 to 15 days. That allows the buyer to back out of the deal without any risk to their deposit if they find something in the inspection report that they don't like or they're unwilling to fix. The next one would be the appraisal contingency, which essentially states that if the house does not appraise for at least the purchase price that was offered by the buyer can then get out of the contract and get their escrow money back. And then the last one being the finance contingency that says, hey, if I'm buying this house, I'm financing the purchase of this house. If in the event in the late stages of finance for my bank, my lender says, hey, I will not be able to obtain financing, I will also be able to back out of this agreement and get my escrow deposit back. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with this, you could see how having all of these contingencies, as far as the seller is concerned, may not be as attractive as an offer that either has fewer contingencies or no contingencies. So prior to last month, we were essentially in an environment where the seller could pick and choose between offers that were above asking, no contingencies, and even added things like a leaseback. And real quick, a leaseback is essentially a tool that a buyer might use to make things more attractive. They might put into the contract in additional contingencies. Hey, if you need an extra 60 days to stay in the house after closing so that once you have the money, you can go ahead and secure another house, we're willing to do that, etc. And I know some people are like, well, why would someone do that? Well, in a very competitive market, people get very creative when they want to secure a home. So let's take a brief gander at this article here. So it says about 14.9, whatever, 15% of home purchase agreements nationwide fell through in June. Highest percentage since the real estate industry ground to a halt at the start of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the reason that I say I like this because when I'm working with buyers, this gives me more negotiating power. Case in point, I'm working with an investor. He already has one house under contract, but there's another house that is very close to the first house that he is very interested in. It that's already under contract. However, knowing that 1 in 5 in my neck of the woods fall through, I'm in touch with that agent and I let her know that, hey, if in the event that contract falls through, please give me a call because I have a very interested buyer that has the means and he is ready and willing and able to take that property to go on their contract. So that's why it's important to know that. Let's see. It says here higher, blah, 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 blah. And it basically just backs up what I just said. Slow down the housing market. Competition is giving home buyers room to negotiate, which is 100% true. Okay, so this makes perfect sense. So remember I was telling you before that with the 3 contingencies that gives the buyer an out. So now what we're finding is since more and more people are putting in contingencies in their contracts because the amount of buyers that are able to do finance deals because of the fact that the interest rates have gone up. Obviously, that definitely affected some buyers, but the buyers that remain are in a better position now to say, hey, you guys aren't getting 30 offers on your house anymore the first week you put up. Maybe now you're only down to 10. So with that being said, I'm going to give you a contract that's going to be more protective of my interests. And what do I mean by that? Appraisal and inspection and appraisal. I'm not just gonna buy a house because I absolutely have to have it and etc. In fact, that's another thing too. I'm sure a big surge in home buying was probably FOMO, where now because of the interest rates and maybe things and other reasons things are slowing down, I think there's less of that. So now people are being a little bit more cautious when purchasing. And that's when the inspection contingency and the appraisal contingency come in. So now, with that being said, now that they have these contingencies, buyers are finding things when they do the inspection that might totally turn them off. Maybe they find out that, hey, this place needs a new roof. Or, hey, there's issues with the foundation. Or, hey, there's like serious issues with the property that they don't want to deal with, and because they had that inspection contingency, they could walk away. Another big one is, hey, maybe they made an offer on a property for $550,000. The inspection report came back, and it's only worth $475,000. Before the market was so crazy, you literally have buyers that didn't care, that they would say, we're going to buy it anyway. I'll just come up with the difference in the cash. The bank will only give me a loan on the $475,000, but I will make up the difference. And I'm sure that's still probably happening, right? But as of right now, it's not happening as much. So don't get too excited. I mean, this is actually a good sign, like I said, for the buyers out there that definitely on the sidelines or thought they were completely priced out of the market. This could afford you opportunities to get back in there and purchase a home. So let's see. Let's move on to the next one. Now, here is the biggins. Foreclosures closing in on pre-pandemic normal. And I love these titles, pre-pandemic normal. Let's take a look. Well, all right. So when I first read this, I thought it said foreclosures close pre-pandemic. No, that's all I saw. I thought this meant this was saying that this was back to pre-pandemic normal. That is not what it actually says. In fact, let's just go to the graph. Now, let's just talk about the financial collapse of 2008, where, man, 1.3 million foreclosures in 2008, then that went up to 1.5, then it went up to 1.6. And as you can see, it took all the way to like 2016 to really clear those up. All right, so 2019, which was pre-pandemic, we're at 296,000 and some change. So 2020 went down to 165, then 2021 65, then 2022 164. Now, you see how 164,000 is still a far cry away from 296, right? I hope everyone sees that, right? Like basic math. But look at this. Foreclosures closing in on pre-pandemic normal. Come on, guys. Like, wouldn't you think this number, based on that title, would be closer to this? I mean, it's a little more than half. Either way, this is another sign that perhaps we may enter into a more balanced market. And what do I mean by that? I mean in the sense that instead of a house going on and off the market in a week or two, maybe it might be on the market maybe over 30 days, maybe a couple of months, which usually there's something psychological that happens right around 30 days was when the seller starts to get nervous, and if they pass 30 days, they tend to be more open to negotiating price or terms or etc. And obviously, the further on that goes, the more likely they are to negotiate. So this is a good sign for buyers all across the board, for residential as well as investors. Still think we are a far cry from an actual crash, but altogether a good sign. I think we're returning more to what's considered normal, and like I said before, normal is a more balanced market. So let's look at this. So it wasn't COVID, but the distressed asset wave might now be ready to hit. This is pretty important in the sense that during COVID, there was a lot of money pumped in to the economy. A lot of renters had renters assistance. A lot of landlords were given assistance as well in a bunch of different forms. So now this is a little bit questionable and debatable as to what's going to happen with distressed assets. Before, since you could basically put up a shack, and you would have someone that would give you make a healthy offer on said shack. Now the environment is starting to change. Now we are probably going to see an increased amount of distressed properties that aren't going to be able to sell for a premium. And I think this would be more for investors that could take advantage of this, since usually, people are buying houses to live in. They kind of want the house to be in pretty good shape when they buy it. Most people are open to, minor repairs here and there, but they don't want something that's totally, jacked up, right? So this is good news for investors, and there could be easing up on some prices, or in some cases what I call unrealistic prices. And we'll see how this turns out. And another big one, inflationary pressures easing for some construction materials. It's not that big of a deal because I read the article, we're talking about a couple of percentage points here. Well, this is actually huge. Lumber dropped 24% month over month, according to the BLS, which is the Bureau of Labor Statistics Data, etc. So this could mean that more inventory comes online because the cost for the developers and the builders is going down, so they could afford to build more, and hopefully at a more affordable price point. There definitely has been a trend in the last 4 or 5 years where a lot of the inventory coming online was basically targeted at upper middle class and higher, which was leaving, regular middle class people and everything else kind of out of the mix. So anyway, guys, to sum up, yeah, so sellers are dropping prices. The crash is not currently here, but there are more opportunities for buyers, both for residential owner-occupied homes as well as investors. Hopefully you guys found this video informative. If you did, give me a like, comment, and share, and I will be back with you guys soon for another video. Once again, Roger Lasad, and I'm out. Talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.